Keep up the good work, man, and stay flat, okay?
Okay, I'm a flat earther.
Hello. We found a flat Earth replacement. Shannon is actually coming out as a flat Earther tonight. She wanted to pop in and let us know. So, Paul, she's right here.
Don't do that.
Sorry, guys.
Paul's asking where you went. She's right here. She's in good hands. We've got her, Paul. Hi, everybody.
Wow.
Let's talk about what happened first. We have no flat Earther here. I thought after last week when Flat Earth Disciple came through that he was going to be popping back in, but he is unresponsive. So we are down Flat Earther. If there's anybody in the chat that believes the Earth is flat, please let us know. You can tag me, and we'll bring you on. Otherwise, we're going to talk about a couple things and just chalk up another one for another Reds victory. Before we start, though, Speaking of Reds, I'd like to debut the shirt that is now live in the Teespring non-sec shop. Dave, you can now get your Reds team cunt. Science doesn't give a shit about your feelings. Evidence is the only thing that matters. There are there's a limited supply of these. I think it's going to go for 3 days now, so make sure you get those. And of course, we'll put it back on there after the 3 days is up. So you don't really have 3 days. It's just a marketing thing Teespring does. But yeah, you can go to nonsexshow.com/merch, MERCH, and get your shirt there. Let's see who we've got here. Giles Engineer.
What's up? Hey, heathens. How y'all doing?
Oh, there we go. And Reds Rhetoric.
I'm depressed. I thought there was going to be a flat earther to smash. Aww.
You're being boycotted. Oh,
Really?
Wait, hold on.
Tragic.
Yes, that's what I heard.
Tragic.
Oh, do tell. Hang on. Let me break up the world's smallest violin. Okay. All right, I'm ready.
You got it. Well, I think we went over this a little bit a few minutes ago. By the way, I may have somebody that's going to come on now. You are too effective at your job, and if you weren't so effective, then we wouldn't have to worry about this.
So basically, what you're saying is I have to be more shit at giving arguments. I can't do the impossible. I'm sorry, Kyle. Really can't.
I need you to try.
I mean,
and let's say hello to. Go ahead.
I can be bribed. I mean,
We'll talk about that later then. And Shannon, actually, I believe you said you got into some whiskey and wanted to talk to a
bad. I've never
What is
talked
it
to a flat earther.
what is it about a flat earther that just you can't believe? Because you were saying that you were saying why and what happened.
Like I think it's fascinating to me what you would have to go through in order to just reject reality is fascinating to me. I want to ask them questions. I don't know the first thing. I'm not equipped like Reds in proving that the earth is round, but I want to understand why they think it's flat, like against all science and common sense and consensus and and why they're so ardent about it. Like, it's fascinating to me. How is that not fascinating? Well, obviously it is. There's people watching. It must be fascinating.
Dave, if you'll send me a link, I think I may have somebody. But Shannon, I have an idea.
Okay.
I think that you should come back on sometime this week and have a conversation with, if you want to find out like why somebody feels the way that they do, and somebody that will really give you an entertaining back and forth, I'll pair you with Russian vids.
Who's Russian vids?
Oh, God.
I'll
I
pair you
don't
with the.
watch flat Earth stuff ever. Who's Russian Vids?
Jesus
Russian-
Christ.
Reds, tell me who's Russian Vids.
Reds, I'll let you explain.
Okay.
Let's tell me.
I want
Tell me
you
right
to
now, do it.
imagine a dumpster fire on top of a train wreck. That is Russian Vids in a nutshell right there.
Why? But for what reason?
I mean, where do I start? That's the actual question. Where do I start?
Here's the thing, though. Here's one of his conspiracies. He believes that O.J. Simpson was set up. That
What?
the
Why?
police framed in order to sow social discourse between people, like in society, in order to make people rise up against each other. It was a government
And the
plot.
Freemasons are a part of it.
Yeah.
So he believes that there is a conspiracy that the government specifically targeted a B-list celebrity football player. Specifically.
Oh, not the government.
Specifically
Not the
that
government.
person. What?
It wasn't the
Who?
government. It was the Freemasons.
Okay, sure. Insert agency here. Specifically
Exactly.
targeted a B-list football player, killed his wife and her boyfriend, and then solely to frame him in order to cause social discourse. Like, what? Why though? Like, what would be the motivation aside from causing social upheaval? You would have to have an end goal. Social upheaval isn't in and of itself an end goal. You would have to want an outcome from that. And how did he come to the conclusion that that outcome was beneficial to that group?
I mean, Shannon, you're using
These are the
this
questions
thing right now. You're using this thing right now where you're approaching this logically. You need to not do that, and that's how you become. Yeah, that's how you become a Russian Vids.
No,
See
but
those
okay, now I
numbers
kind of want
that
to talk.
see those numbers that appeared magically in Reds Rhetoric's name.
The 3-3, yeah.
The 3-3 and the 666 and
Yeah.
yeah, that's the kind of stuff that Russian Vids believes in.
Yeah. He believes in numerology. He believes that numerology is actually a thing.
But you can find patterns in almost anything.
Exactly.
If you're seeking patterns, you're able to you ignore the misses and just register the hits, and you can find a pattern in almost anything.
At the end of the Non Sequitur show, where Russian Vids was actually coming on, I was able to use numerology to confirm that Russian Vids had a sexual relationship with O.J. Simpson.
It's true.
I did it. True.
I didn't find enough whiskey. Is the answer to the question nobody asked? Is that I didn't find enough whiskey?
Reds, don't you have you have something that you want to announce too? By the way, don't you?
Oh, goodness. Are we going to do this now? Okay, fine. Whatever. It's an hour early, but whatever. Okay, so for those of you who are watching, there is a chicken shit pussy bitch by the name of Nathan Oakley who has been talking a lot of shit from his echo chamber. Now, Nathan Oakley is a flat earther who has been constantly talking shit about how I am supposedly scared to debate him. And then he's been saying this over the last few weeks, maybe even a few months at this point. But the thing is that I have never declined a debate with Nathan Oakley. Never. In fact, the only reason I initially refused to talk to him was because he was kind of abusive to his kids. But whatever, I'll go ahead and look past that because you guys want a dumpster fire and I'm here to deliver. So here is the deal, Nathan. I challenge you to a structured and moderated debate, a lot like the one I had with Jeranism on the Non Sequitur show, or a similar neutral platform. Basically, I want you to be away from your mute button. The only time I'm going to refuse a debate with you is when it's done where you have control. But if you step out of your echo chamber and onto a platform where you don't have control, I will be more than happy to debate you. In fact, I'm not just more than happy to debate you. I'm actively calling your ass out right here, right now. So in the description of this stream, there will be a link to a clock that's continuously counting up, and it will track the seconds, the minutes, and the days gone by, basically detailing every single second that Nathan Oakley has been refusing to debate Reds Rhetoric on a neutral platform. So, bitch, at this point, the ball is now in your court. You have been called out. Step out of your sandbox, step into a place where you do not have access to the mute button, and back your fucking bullshit up. So with that, that is my announcement. Talk to you guys later. Oh, wait, not later. We still got a flat earther to talk to, because, yeah, you found somebody, right? 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 Right?
Yes, please.
Right? Right, Kyle?
Right. Kyle, right?
Sorry. I have. I was just speaking with Flat Earth Jesus.
Who's Flatter?
Yeah,
The name drew me.
we're trying to get somebody on.
Okay, so I sent Flat Earth Jesus. I think is going to come on too. So just continue with the people that you're talking to as well, GE. Just in case he doesn't. I just sent him a link, but we'll see. So hopefully here shortly we will have we'll have somebody here for a rest of the debate. But one thing that I would like to talk about while we wait on them to come in is we usually, when I used to search for like flat earth videos, anytime that we have like this happen and we need to do something like last minute backup, you can go on YouTube and you can type in like flat earth, right? And you can filter the search results by the upload date. And every time I've done that previously, you would have videos that would literally say uploaded 30 minutes ago, uploaded an hour ago, uploaded 2 hours ago, and it would go within that 24-hour now. Well, I think YouTube has really cracked down on pushing out the flat earth content because and I think GE, you did this too, right? You searched for it as well. And got the same results.
But I did notice that I think that their search is broken right now. I don't think that it's technically like them trying to censor anybody, because I did that same thing for atheist and it got the same results.
Oh, okay.
Or that's scary.
Or they're censoring us too.
Scary.
Yeah.
Email live.
I'd do it for something neutral. Do it for puppies and see what happens.
Email that.
Oh, I see that Flat Earth Jesus has logged in. Okay.
Oh, we got Flat Earth Jesus in the house.
That is quite the ostentatious name.
So what we'll do is, Shannon, I'll tell you what we'll do. Since you're here, I will let you. I'll let you ask a couple questions.
Oh, I'm getting
hello
noise.
Feedback.
It's difficult to hear you.
Yeah. Flat Earth Aussie Jesus, you might want to mute for a second because we're getting some feedback from you.
Or grab headphones.
Yeah. It sounds like the stream is playing or something, maybe.
So what we'll do before we get into the actual debate, so that it's not unfair, we can't be accused of being unfair. Shannon, I'm gonna let you, since you're here, ask a couple questions to Aussie Jesus, and then we'll let the debate between Reds and Flat Earth Jesus commence. Sure. Is that cool?
Thanks. Yeah, it's cool with me if it's cool with him, and if it's cool with Ryan.
Are you still getting that feedback? Sorry.
No, sound good now. Dave, just throw Jesus in the middle.
Ooh. Should I just refer to him as Jesus? Is Jesus?
Yeah.
That seems odd.
That's what we do.
Oh.
That's what we do.
He's behind Reds.
Actually, what we'll do is Shannon will slide you in the middle, in between all of us, and then we'll put Aussie Jesus in the top window. And yeah. Oh, somebody told me to check Twitter. Hey, Flat Earth Aussie Jesus, how's it going? Nice to see you again.
Good, Kyle. How are you?
Good. Would you like to air your grievances about the mods real quick, because I know that you want to get that out there, and then we can move on past that.
I think it's just I think it's ridiculous that I'm constantly being censored from being able to comment on any of your live chats. I give as much as I get from people. If they want to be rude and arrogant to me, well, I'll give it back. But if people are polite
Sure.
and ask sensible questions about putting shit on me, then we get along just fine. So I just think,
Sure.
I don't appreciate being blocked constantly. I'd like to be able to have freedom of speech. I think that should be everybody's right, and we have the right to be wrong if we so be.
I agree. So, guys in the chat, do not, if Flat Earth Authenticity Jesus is just commenting his opinion and not saying anything racist or spamming, allow him to say that. There.
It instantly
you heard me say
it doesn't even show up.
Oh, you might. Oh, you may be hidden then. I'll see about that. I can fix that. Okay, so Shannon, I wanted to ask you a couple questions about your belief in the the flat Earth, and then we'll go to Reds. But Shannon wanted to ask a question or two before we started. Shannon.
Hi, Flat Earth Jesus. It's nice to meet you. I'm Shannon.
G'day, Shannon.
Hi. How should I refer to you? Is just as Jesus?
You just call me Ross. That's my name.
Ross, perfect. Yes, that's a little bit more comfortable for me. So thank you, Ross. It's nice to meet you. So my first question for you is, did you always think this way, or did something change that led you to a belief that the Earth is flat?
Oh, absolutely not. I used to fully believe the globe. I was the biggest understander of the cosmological world. I used to sit and watch sunsets all the time, thinking I can feel the planet spinning away as I'm watching the sun disappear behind the curvature. That was what I grew up with. And it was probably once when I watched a lunar eclipse that I sort of started to first question it, because the shadow coming across the moon was coming from the completely wrong angle from what I expected it to be. I felt I was in touch with this living Earth I'm on, this spinning ball. I watched the moon coming up from the east over the easternmost point of Australia near where I live. I could feel the sun, rolling away behind us type of thing because of the ball we're on. But here, this shadow suddenly comes from this completely wrong angle, and it just blew my mind. I thought something's really wrong here. There's lots of other things like the Tamarack mine mysteries. Sorry.
I was going to say, so it was essentially, it was a perceptual experience that you had that led you to no longer believe, or not no longer believe, but at least start questioning whether or not the Earth was round. So did you have any other external variables that contributed to it, or was it something in your mind at the time? So there was no other external influences telling you the world might be flat, but you just saw that lunar eclipse and thought to yourself, gee, I should look into this? Or you had other external influences?
No, that was just a tiny little thing.
That was just a tiny little thing?
That was a tiny little thing, that one. Like, even for years before that, as I was about to say with the Tamarack mine mysteries, how they worked out, they're trying to work out a formula for how big the Earth is for the circumference. And when they dug a mile deep, a mile apart of the surface, it ended up being 1 mile and 8 inches at the bottom, which sort of made everything completely opposite to what we believe it is. And when you think of the gravitron ride, the reason we stick to the walls is because we're spinning around on the inside of it, being pushed outwards. So I was even contemplating the hollow Earth, us being on the inside of it.
Has an angle on purpose. Okay, so I'm not a physicist, but the gravitron ride has an angle on purpose, so that. Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So
but if you're on the outside of the gravitron ride, you'd be getting flung off.
Right, you get flung off, but there's a wall stopping you. That's why you don't get. Okay. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So. What you believed it, and then you had these perceptual experiences that caused you some sort of dissonance that made you not be able to believe it anymore. And then did you just research this yourself and come to these conclusions?
Well, it's been a long, drawn-out affair of researching all these things, but now I've seen things visually with my eyes, like going up headlands where you can just see way too far across perfectly flat and level water.
Okay, so that's not actually the question.
I need to turn it up.
The question I asked you. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll come closer to the microphone if that's an issue. Did you research this yourself, and that's why you came to these conclusions, or was there any sort of external influence? You're giving me perceptual experiences and examples of why the Earth is flat. I'm not really interested in why the Earth is or isn't flat. I'm interested in why you think that. So
there's been definitely a lot of external influences, but I research just about everything and anything, especially when it comes to any sort of conspiracy. I just look into it, and I sort of have a really good intuition on a lot of things. And if it just doesn't seem right to me, then I will look into it. And when the flat Earth came up, just like everybody else, I questioned it, and thought that's ridiculous. I'll be able to debunk this in no time at all. I did mention once before too that my father-in-law, a merchant sea captain, all his life after he'd retired, was sitting there having breakfast one day, and he turns and says to me, "You know what? I think the Earth is flat." And I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. All I can visualize in my mind is water just flowing away, falling off, and that sort of thing. And I thought it was crazy. But here he is, an experienced seaman. He's been in the ocean, and he doesn't believe in it's curved. He thinks it's flat. And
so his
me, after
anecdotal
researching it,
experience fed into you as evidence that because he's been on the ocean, his just his testimony towards that was something
triggered
that
us.
compelled you to believe that
At the time, I just
this
even
had some
said, as we're
merit.
driving home to my wife, I said to her, "I think that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. He's insane." And it took me
But
a
yet you're
good
referencing it
5
now.
10 years. Yeah, because somebody with experience
Is it
actually
relevant
said that that's what they
to
believe.
Okay, so my questions regarded what made you think that. You said at the time that couldn't have led you to that because you thought it was ridiculous, but yet it was your answer to why you think that. Do you see how that might cause some
Well,
sort
that's just
of,
more evidence for
might seem
what I'm
disparate
saying.
to me?
This is,
So
everything is a journey.
retrospectively,
Like,
when you're looking
ideas
back,
always
you're
change.
adding it in. So retrospectively, when you're
Yeah, when I
piecing
look back, I
together in your
say,
mind
yeah,
the
somebody did
reason
say that.
to justify believing this, that experience adds into it.
Well, I see everything that happens in the past as like seeds that get planted. And so you just leave them in your back of your mind. And if eventually you find reason for them to have, have reason to be true, it's like you say, well, then they start to bear fruit. I don't just completely disregard every single little seed that comes along. I just plant them all in my mind. And then as more and more evidence comes along over time, I see what does and what doesn't bear fruit. And being on a stationary planar Earth seems to me the most logical and obvious example or obvious explanation for the world we live upon.
I feel like you may be used to just defending the model and not necessarily a reason for believing that the model is true, which is more so what I'm interested in. That you're thinking into
Okay, so you want a reason?
That could be a reason why. Yeah. So if you say that all of these experiences are essentially like seeds to you, so would you say that the experiences that you have, the perception experience, the interact experiences you have more weight to you than somebody presenting you evidence to the contrary, or would have enough emotional weight to you that you would reject evidence to the contrary outright because they have planted those seeds?
And we'll let this
Well, the thing is,
before you answer this, Father Jesus, we'll let this will be the last one before we get into the actual debate between you and Reds. So just keep that in mind. Okay.
Oh, I have so many. Okay. I could do this.
I know we'll bring you back to that.
So could you just quickly recap that question?
So you've referenced that you seem to fall back into defending the model. Very little interest to me. What I'm interested in is how people come to decisions and why people think the way that they do. That's what's of interest to me. And I obviously think that the Earth is round, and you have a difference of opinion in this situation. And it seems to me what you're referencing is retrospective anecdotal experiences regarding interactions that you've had or perceptual experiences that seem disparate to you. And those seem to have some sort of emotional weight. And that emotional weight may feed into your perceptions and be a lens through which you look when you're analyzing or assessing evidence. So my question to you would be, do you feel that that's a fair assessment and that maybe that's the lens that you're looking through and that's why you might reject something to the contrary outright? Or do you really feel as though you take an honest look at and consider the evidence?
Okay, no, I hear what you're saying, and I'd honestly like to see some real evidence for us actually living on a spinning ball. Like, there's no reasonable reason to believe that the ground beneath your feet is spinning
That
faster
may
than the
be a
speed of
deflection,
sound.
though, because that wasn't
That's
actually
the
the
rate of its
question.
speed.
It was an appeal to more evidence
No,
as opposed to an
yeah,
answer to the
but
question.
the evidence for the globe is non-existent, and that's why if somebody can convince
Oh my
me
gracious.
all these phenomenal speeds that they say we're going at actually exist, while all the constellations have remained constant for thousands of years, as though Earth is some special little place that all the constellations have to go billions of different speeds just so they always appear exactly the same to us for thousands of years. It's just to believe that sort of thing is a much greater faith than to believe that Jesus walked on water. It's
I
the,
think
the
that
stars
just to
themselves are
stop you
telling
right
us
there
a
for one
story that
second,
we are not
you
traveling too fast.
immediately fell into a diatribe regarding your defense of the model when I expressed to you outright that I have no interest in the model or whether or not the Earth is or is not round. I was asking you questions regarding your perceptions and how you come to the conclusions that you come to. And instead of addressing how you come to the conclusions that you come to, you instinctively fell back into a defense of the model when the model wasn't even in question. I just want you to recognize that.
Okay, so what you're trying to analyze my personality rather than the reason why I believe what I believe. Is that
No. I
I
like
don't
to.
quite understand that. Okay?
I'm
The
very
evidence is
interested
the
in why
reason
you
why I
believe.
believe what I believe.
What we need to do
Okay?
is
When I look at stationary level water, that's why I believe it. Okay.
what we'll do is we'll set aside a different time to maybe have this conversation more in detail, Shannon. But I'm so glad that you came by and joined us for a little bit. It was
And
fantastic.
thank you, Flat Earth Jesus. Thank you, Ross, for the conversation. I
Thank you, Shannon.
appreciate it, and I hope I didn't put you in
Yeah, and I'd like to have
an
a
uncomfortable
more
situation.
one.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. It was nice to talk to you, and everybody have fun. It was nice to hang out.
Bye, Shannon. We love you.
Bye.
Yes.
G, do you want to show off your oven mitt real quick?
Oh, yeah, I just did, but yeah. So I have a special oven mitt for face palming. It's a face palm mitt. It's a NASA U.S. Space and Rocket Center face palm
Love it.
thing. So I'll be
Really
busting
good
that
idea.
out tonight.
Okay, so Reds, anything that you want to say about anything that has been said up until this point? I remember last time we talked, we left off rockets.
Rockets are absolutely amazing. I think rockets are the best thing that humanity has ever made, personally. But that's just me. Maybe I'm biased. Who knows?
Yeah.
So yeah, and like I said, rockets are great. But yeah, I guess I don't know. You said that there's no evidence for the globe. I guess we'll just go ahead and ignore the mountains of evidence that we do indeed have for the globe. But I'm wondering where is the evidence for the flat Earth? Because I have yet to see any.
Water finding its level within the shape of its container is pretty much about the only evidence you really need. The fact that there's an atmosphere, a pressurized atmosphere surrounded by a vacuum, when the very first thing the vacuum that an atmosphere would do is find the place of least resistance and fill the void, not just cling to a ball because of gravity. I mean, that takes faith to believe that that's what keeps it here, rather than observation of reality. Observation of reality says everything has a pressure gradient because of the density and buoyancy that everything naturally experiences, which we can observe. So to think that you live on a spinning ball in a vacuum of space where the atmosphere just clings to it because of gravity, where gravity gets less and less, that's insanity. There's no
Okay, could you
unscientific
actually hold on, sorry to interrupt, but just to I guess insert this. Flat Earth Jesus, could you please explain the basic principle behind gravity? Like, could you explain that for us real quick?
Well, there is no attraction of mass. That's just a belief. It's a fantasy.
Well, no,
Everything
that's not
just
what I asked.
sinks through until it finds a place of buoyancy.
No, that's not what I asked. I asked for you to explain, just so that we all know what understanding of gravity you're working off of. Could you please explain the
There is
principle
no
of
understanding
gravity?
of gravity. You ask Neil deGrasse Tyson what is gravity. We don't know. There is no explanation for gravity apart from attraction of mass. So why don't you tell me what you think it is?
No, because I want to know what you think it is. Like if you really, if you
I
really
told you
know
what it is.
gravity is, tell me what gravity is on the globe model. Just explain it to me. Like a third grader can do this. My son, he can do this. Can you do this?
Well, you didn't listen when I said attraction of mass. That's what gravity is on your globe model. Attraction of mass, as though the more heavy something is, the more attractive to another thing it should be. It's a ridiculous model because everything falls at the same speed because it's falling through the density of air, regardless of its mass. There is no attraction of mass. Oh, you can measure its rate of fall if you want it, 9.8 meters per second squared, but that doesn't mean that's what gravity is. That's just what we observe it doing. So why don't you accept that as my answer?
Reds, can you
Kyle,
gravity is?
Please,
yes.
Sure thing. Please grab the whiteboard. People in the live chat would like to see the droppity thing, please. You're the man for the job. So are you telling me that we have 0 observations of the atmosphere becoming less and less and less until it becomes an eventual vacuum?
Until it becomes an eventual vacuum, yeah, I don't think we've ever detected that. It becomes too rarefied until we can go any further. But now they're apparently trying to tell us that the moon is in the Earth's atmosphere. So, go figure that. The atmosphere extends out 286,000 miles in your belief.
What they're saying with the moon is that there is a blow off from the magnetic winds, or I'm sorry, the solar winds, I should say. And that blow off is very, very fine atoms of hydrogen. That's all it is little. There's an atom of hydrogen here. There's an atom of hydrogen here. These little tiny atoms an atmosphere does not make in the way that we mean it. When we say atmosphere, we mean that which has the ability to either cause a drag, be breathable in some way. It's a lot different than type of atmosphere that, like, let's say the International Space Station is orbiting in. There is a difference there. So the way that they describe it is not an atmosphere, but they describe it as a cloud of, atoms that eventually extend past the orbit of the moon. But it's so thin that it's practically a vacuum. So no, the moon is not within our atmosphere. It never has been and never will be. And as far as evidence of our atmosphere thinning to the point where it becomes a vacuum, that's where I suggest you watch my rocket launch videos. Because in one of those videos, I actually show the rocket gaining altitude and it gets illuminated from the sun. The gases coming out of the rocket start to expand wider and wider and wider because the air is getting thinner and thinner and thinner. Eventually, the air becomes so thin that you can't see the escaping gases anymore. So if you wanted evidence that has been verified in reality, there you go. What's the problem there?
The problem is that you see the rocket coming back down again, as we expect, because the air is so rarefied, it gives it no buoyancy whatsoever, nothing to thrust through, and that is why it starts dropping again. It goes in like that big Disneyland curve, as I've already explained last time. And so appealing to rockets to prove something, like, did they take anything with them to do samples of the air and prove this sort of thing? No, of course not. And if the moon, as you say, is up in this area where there is so little air, of course, then what the hell were the astronauts actually breathing? They had a tiny little oxygen tank and an oxygen scrubber, but they're up there for 11 hours playing golf. Where did the golf buggy fit into the bloody moon lander, as well as all these scuba tanks that they would have had to take when 2 large scuba tanks last one diver 1 hour underwater? What air were they breathing?
Apparently you don't know the science of a rebreather, but that's okay. I'll accept that. And you also don't understand that the moon buggy was a foldable craft or a foldable vehicle. It was foldable. In fact, room and compartmentalizing it was actually a big design challenge for the lunar program. But let's stick to the rocket things. You say, oh, we see rockets come back down. No, we don't. No, we do not. But not only do we not see those rockets coming back down, other than the first stage, of course, but we also have video of the International Space Station in space. Now, how do I know it's in space? Because I personally measured its altitude. Not only did I measure its altitude, I also measured its size. Not only did I measure its size, but I also measured its speed. if that craft was in Earth's atmosphere, there would be so much friction on it, it would have burnt up over 20 years ago. Guess what we don't see happening to the International Space Station? So we have evidence of rockets lifting off. We have evidence of objects at an altitude that NASA says they're at, and we have them traveling at a speed that they could not maintain in atmosphere because they're traveling at 8 kilometers per second. So again, where's the issue of you believing that our atmosphere is next to a vacuum when we have evidence of crafts being in that vacuum because they're doing things that you can't do in an atmosphere?
Well, how much oxygen do they send up to the fake station then if it's outside the atmosphere? You can't keep rebreathing the same old air over and over and over. Oxygen gets used up, it oxidizes, it expires. You need trees and oceans and everything to have fresh oxygen. You can't be in outer space for months and months at a time without oxygen. It's an essential requirement to life. It's obviously faked, and to believe that, like I spoke about the Gravitron ride just previously, and it's going a fraction of the speed that you say this fake station is going at 17,150 miles per hour. You'd get pinned to the wall. You would not be in a free fall motion, just floating about in space as though you're suspended from a harness. That's all absolute bullshit. And,
No.
if you still believe in that sort of stuff, you've grown up in a Disney world and you still believe in science fiction, and it's all crap.
It's actually called an understanding of things. So let me go ahead and describe this to you. I actually did the math on this to calculate. No. I actually did the science. Here's something that you didn't do. What you have is a belief. What I have is evidence, which is the exact opposite of that. I don't believe this stuff. I know this stuff because I actually did what you flat earthers told me to do. I went out there and investigated it. Now let's go ahead and accept, which you're wrong about, that the International Space Station is not inhabited. Fine, let's go ahead and give that to you. That doesn't negate the fact that that craft is still up there at that altitude, traveling at that speed. If that craft were in atmosphere, then it would be burning up. The fact that it doesn't show that it's in a vacuum environment. So what part of that is so hard to understand?
No, it doesn't. Well, an aeroplane is in the atmosphere and it doesn't burn up. But so if you've got a drone at a certain height appearing to be that far away, but because it's a scaled down model, then you could just as easily believe that it's the same size and distance as you believe the ISS is.
Not with parallax measurement.
It doesn't
not
have
with
to
parallax
necessarily be that high or that size.
No. With parallax,
how many measurements did you take from many different locations at the same time?
We didn't use its size to verify its distance. We observed its parallax. If you have an object that's a certain distance away from you, and you have a second observer, you can triangulate that object using parallax. The size of the craft be damned. So if someone was trying to fool us with a drone, they might be able to scale it right, but they would be doomed the very moment that we decide to investigate the parallax of our measurement. So via the parallax of the measurement, so trigonometry is in on the conspiracy then?
Well, trigonometry isn't actually going to be very effective when you're measuring something over vast distances, because you've got that factor called distance diminution where things shrink as they get further away. So it might appear to be much further away to each observer than it actually is. But
we're not talking about angular size. We're talking about parallax, the shifting of position relative to a background object, that object being the moon.
Yeah, but that's
the
because
moon
you've
has
made
been
an
known...
assumption of how far the distant objects are. If you don't,
no, there was no assumption made.
Objects calculated completely wrong. It is. You assume the moon is 286,000 miles away, yet it might only be 50 miles away for all we know.
We didn't need to know that the moon could be 3,000 miles away. That was irrelevant to our measurements. All we needed to know was the angular size of the moon, and we needed that object to go in front of it. Since the angular size of the moon is known, we can use that as a baseline for our measurements. Not only that, but the distance between myself and our second observer is known. So that too is also not an assumption. We also have video proof to show where the ISS went over the move when you look at our two observation points. When you do that, you get a parallax measurement that cannot be faked. If someone was trying to trick us by having a lower altitude aircraft, but that is smaller, like a drone, for example, then they would be screwed the very moment we showed parallax. Because that parallax measurement would tell us if that craft was 60,000 feet in the air or 260 miles in the air. Guess what value we got? And from that point, we could then figure out the rest of it. Its angular size, thus giving us its actual size, and how fast it traversed our frame at that distance, which gives us its speed. And its speed is, yes, 17,500 miles per hour, exactly what NASA's been telling us, which that speed is impossible in atmosphere. What is the fastest aircraft? What was it, like the SR-71 Blackbird? It went Mach 4. They're going, what, Mach 26? So yes, all the evidence points to them being in
that the Earth is going Mach 86. You know, how do you explain that if the Earth itself is traveling Mach 86 just around the sun itself, let alone the sun going, you know, that 500 million miles an hour through space? You can't ever try and explain to me how these things are keeping up with the Earth's speed. They only make sense because the Earth is stationary.
Geez, well, let's go ahead and adopt a geocentric universe.
And also,
let's say
that thing about triangulating towards something.
Let's say the Earth is not moving. Let's say the Earth is in the middle. Let's get rid of the rest of the solar system here. All right, I'm just going to give you that for the sake of this argument. We're sticking with the space station. We're not going off to other stuff. The space station is doing things that are impossible.
On a stationary planar Earth.
The International Space Station is doing stuff that cannot be done in atmosphere. So how do you explain this?
Yeah, CGI and bloody green screen. They're doing, you know, Disneyland stuff.
So you're saying I CGI'd my observation? Did I CGI my observation? I'm not talking about what NASA's been doing.
You haven't taken into account that the only measurement that you can say is factual is the distance between you and your other fellow doing this experiment at the same time. That's the only measurement you can actually confirm without any sort of bias. You can't estimate the height of something when it's at an unknown height.
Okay,
because everything else behind it is also an unknown height.
Okay, Flat Earth Jesus. If you have a car sitting somewhere, right, and you measure the amount of time it takes for that car to pass between point A and point B, where you know the distance between point A and point B, and then you can calculate the speed of that, like if it's a car going on the interstate or whatnot, would that be a measurement that we can know? Or is that just some unknown measurement?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, because it's on the ground, and the ground measurement can be measured. But once you go up into space, you're sort of going into unmeasurable, unknown quantities, and you cannot compare one, say, a distant star to another one, especially when you say they're millions of light years apart from each other, unless you actually know the height. And the height, as I say, I don't think the height can actually be accurately measured because you're using, say, something like barometric pressure or something to try and say how high you are. And yet all of these things get less and less as you go higher up. And so you're assuming things are much further away than they actually are. So, no, I don't see how you can do it for something at an unknown height with an unknown measurable quantity. On land, we can measure the quantity so we know exactly how far it's going. We can get out there for a little wheel or something, an odometer, and measure the actual distance. We know what we're talking about. In space, it's an unknown quantity. You don't know what you're measuring. You're just estimating. And you can make up anything you want it to be.
Let me go ahead and just systematically debunk everything that you just said. Because I think the real reason why you think the way you do is because you have a severe misunderstanding about how trigonometry works and how we can use it to verify things. I have sent David my video where I detail everything. And I'm going to go over it step by step. And I'm going to ask you a few questions, just true or false questions. And we'll see where you actually disagree with my methodology. I think that's fair. And I think everyone in the live chat would like to see that too. So, David, can you please show the image and pause it at 9 minutes, 17 seconds so I can ask the first question in relation to it?
Nine minutes and what, Reds?
9 minutes and 17 seconds, and pause it right there.
Okay.
All right. So can you see that image on the screen?
I can see that image on the screen.
Perfect. Would you agree that angle A equals angle B?
No.
We have not even got past the first step.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Why not, Flat Earth Jesus? Why don't you agree that those are equal angles?
Why would you think so? Because if it was exactly in the middle between you, yes, it would be. But the moon, as I've already said, is an unknown distance. You can't say yes, that angle would be the same.
That doesn't matter. You're just
Because
looking at the
unknown distance.
angle.
You're just looking at the angles. You're just looking at the angles. Okay. Oh my God. Okay. So
Yeah, but those lines are looking at a different part of the moon. So
no
okay, in that
shit,
diagram,
Sherlock.
okay, yes, your angles are the same. Okay,
Fuck.
fine.
Okay, so the
Go
angles are
ahead.
the same.
Yeah, the angles in that diagram are the same, but they're not how
The angles
a real viewer would see it from Earth. But go ahead.
Perfect. So angle A equals angle B, correct?
Correct.
Perfect. If the angular size of the moon is known, if we have a value for the angular size of the moon, A is going to be
Yes.
less than the angular size of the moon, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So can you please skip ahead to 9 minutes and 54 seconds and pause so I can ask the next question? Okay. Do you see those two tracks, those H, that H pattern right there, right?
True.
Would you agree that that is a picture of angular separation between our two observers? What you're seeing is a superimposed image where we put both of our observations one on top of the other, and we superimpose it. So would you agree that that shows an angular separation between our two observers?
Yeah, but why are they different sizes? Each little picture of your space station.
They're
Okay,
actually
well, I'll just
not.
say true. Fine, go ahead.
They're not different sizes, believe me. One is just filmed
Well, one
at
looks a lot
30
smaller
frames.
on the left, one on the right looks bigger.
One is filmed at 30 frames per second. One is filmed at 60, so they're a lot dimmer and thus look smaller. But they're actually the same size if you compare them. But anyway, so here you go. Okay. So you agree that there is an angular separation between our two observers?
Of course, yeah.
All right, and that angular separation is a fraction of the size of the moon, correct?
Yeah. About a quarter.
All right, perfect. So we agree that it is a fraction the size of the moon. So David, can you please skip ahead to 10 minutes and 10 seconds and pause? What we did was a little bit of pixel counting. I'm going to ask you to trust me on this, but the moon is 962 pixels tall. The span of our two tracks from center to center is 224 pixels tall. So that means we get a ratio of 4.29 to 1. Do you agree with that?
That seems reasonable.
That seems reasonable. All right, perfect. So we have a ratio of 4.29 to 1. So if the angular size of the moon is known, in order to find the angle, which is our span of track, all we have to do is take the angular size of the moon and divide it by 4.29, correct?
Yes, but how do you know the angular size of the moon?
We measured it we measured it directly. My friend Astronomy Live has an LX200 telescope, which can actually do angular size measurements directly without any other inputs. Anyway, David, can you please do me a favor and please skip ahead to 11 minutes and 31 seconds.
Oh, and we're almost at 1,000 people, so the record
Perfect.
could be in jeopardy tonight.
All right, so I'm going to skip ahead. So the angular size of the moon is known. It's about 0.52 degrees wide. So since we divided that by 4.29, we got a value for A of 0.1212 degrees. because you agreed that angle A equals angle B. That means B also equals 0.1212 degrees, correct?
No, I'm not seeing where you're coming from with this, because just because I agreed those angles are the same, it doesn't mean that.
Well, that's all I actually care about. Do you agree that those angles are the same, and thus those angles equal 0.1212 degrees respectively?
Fine. Okay.
Okay, we agree. Now, you would also agree that to find the distance between our ground, the ground in which our observers are standing, and the peak of the triangle that's labeled with a B, we could cut it in half, cut our triangle in half and make it a right triangle and use basic trigonometry to figure that out, right?
Sure.
All right, so we did that. So 0.555 kilometers divided by the tangent of 0.0606 degrees gives us a value for that. So we were looking at the space station while the space station was 326.05 miles or 524.73 kilometers. Are you with me so far?
Yes, I'm with you. Don't
Perfect.
agree with
So,
you, but
perfect. All right. So, David, can you please fast forward to 11 minutes and 51 seconds? All right. A little bit like a second further. Perfect. This is right there. Perfect. What you're looking at is the side of our LX200 telescope. It shows the angle at which it was looking at. Does that say 53 degrees?
it does say 53 degrees.
Perfect. So that means that during the time of our observation, we were looking at the space station at 53 degrees. Perfect. So, David, can you please do me a favor and fast forward to 12 minutes and 49 seconds? So, since we know that we were seeing the station at 326.05 miles away, and since we know that we were looking at 53 degrees, to find the altitude, all we have to do is solve this right triangle that we have built, correct?
Fair enough, yeah.
So we do that. 524.73 kilometers times the sine of 53 degrees gives us an altitude of 260.39 miles, and that is without taking into account the curvature of the Earth. So via this, you agree that we measured the altitude of the International Space Station from 260 miles away. Is that
No,
correct?
actually, absolutely not. Absolutely not, because I've
Okay.
already told you, you're not taking into
You
account
agree with
distance
everything.
diminution, the way things shrink in distance, which you can only measure correctly with, say, a real tape measure or something physical and tangible that you can take all the way out there to actually measure. If you're measuring over distance and trying to use trigonometry to get a real answer, then you're not doing it right. The only thing you can actually measure is, as I said, the ground distance. You haven't actually measured something just by measuring the distance of it compared to something behind it, like the moon, because you don't know the actual distance of the moon. So, if the
Okay,
distance
let me,
diminution is the one factor that is not taken into account here, which in an example like this, because you're looking out into space, it's an unknown quantity. So no, I don't agree that the actual distance that you've measured at that 326 miles is factual. It's
okay,
basically what you assume without taking that into account.
okay. Let me ask you this, and I'll let you guys get back to it. Now, Flat Earth Jesus, do you accept like the altimeter readings on an airplane? Like if an airplane has an altimeter that says that it's flying at 40,000 feet, would you accept that as a good measurement, or is that a fake measurement?
I'm not really convinced, to be honest, because as I said, it's something that's calibrated, say at sea level, according to the air pressure there. So as you go higher, the air pressure would appear to be less and less, given the false reading. And I don't think they're actually at 40,000 feet, to be honest. It's not something I've really seriously investigated, but I don't think it is a true reading, because what actual method are they using to say they're at 40,000 feet? Tell me what method they're actually using to say that they're at that height. You can't tell me?
So I mean, there's a couple of ways. One of the ways is that you can use like what is it? It's either radio waves or sonar pulses to determine how far you are from the ground. I'm not sure. Reds, do you know like how modern altimeters work?
Probably has something to do with radar.
Yeah,
Probably.
That's what I. That's
so. In other words, you don't have a clue. You just believe on faith.
No,
See, this
because
is the problem.
my forte is not aircraft, dude.
By authorities.
My forte is not aircraft. I'm not going to altimeters to figure out the altitude of the ISS. I'm using basic math, which you agreed to until I got to its conclusion. You know what we call that? We call that intellectual dishonesty.
No. We agreed to a point, because everything that you said on a 2D flat image, which you showed on a screen, is theoretically correct. But when you apply it to reality, which is what we're talking about, which is what perspective is all about, there are many aspects to perspective, and the biggest one is distance diminution. And you can't measure that on 2D piece of paper. It changes. It's just like if you built a physical triangle and you started walking around it, all those angles keep changing just because you're walking around it, but it's still the exact same triangle. It just looks different because of the way you perceive it. Everything comes back to perspective, and to try and measure perspective by looking at it through two different people's perception of what they've seen is not an accurate way to get a picture of reality.
This wasn't a 2D measurement. You forget that we measured 53 degrees with the telescope. That was taking it into the third dimension. So when we have that triangle, with the original triangle at 326 miles, I think it was, what we did was we, in theory, laid it on its side at 53 degrees. That 53-degree measurement brought it into the third dimension. This isn't simply 2D math. When we used it, we were able to correctly calculate the altitude of the ISS, and you agreed with every single step that we did until we got to its conclusion. Then all of a sudden it doesn't work because of reasons.
But I didn't agree with, I told you I disagreed with you when you said how far the distance is. I told you I think it's wrong. So I agreed with everything as far as you said, as far as those 2D images you're showing and the angles being the same. But when I told you that, well, when you said it's 360 something miles, I said, no, I don't agree. So, and then you came to your conclusion, and that's why I had the opportunity to speak, because you just told me I can only say false or true to whatever you're asking. And I said that one was false. I don't believe that you can measure vast distances from a single point without actually measuring it, and then having something that you can factually then claim to be the truth. You're claiming that something out of space.
I would actually agree. You can't measure it from a single location, which is why we had two observers, thus giving us our parallax measurement. At this point, dude, the way that you are describing your position leads me to believe, and I think everyone else to believe in the chat, that you just reject all mathematical conclusions that happen to disagree with your narrative.
Not at all. No, I just say that when something is very high up, the distance of it is an unknown quantity. It's simply
until it becomes measured.
And so, but for both of you then to say that because the moon seems to be at this sort of angle between the two of them, when it's an unknown quantity, you're not. You're basically just. I don't know.
Every quantity that we used in our measurements has been verified. That's the part you're misunderstanding. We didn't take anyone else's word for it about the angular size of the moon. We actively measured it that very night because we have kit available to us, and anyone else that wants to do a little bit of
5 meters away from
if you splurge a little bit on Amazon, you can buy all the equipment that we use to make our measurements. And you can even verify that those instruments give you the correct answers. You can take an object of a known size at a known distance and use these tools to measure its angular size. And using the law of perspective equation, alpha equals 2 times the arctan of G over 2R, you can verify that your instruments are correct. And so when you apply it in the field to an object of an unknown angular size like the moon, you can measure it directly and use those as inputs in your calculations. Do you disagree with that?
Well, okay, let's assume that everything you're saying is correct. Let's assume you're right. That still does not for 1 second prove that we're on a spinning space ball in a vacuum of space, does it? I mean, we've all seen what happens in a vacuum. You haven't
the vacuum
responded
part,
to
it
that
actually
at
does
all
prove.
when I
That was
said
the
that
whole point
the
of this.
atmosphere instantly dissipates into the path of least resistance. It will enter into the void, and the next thing that happens is water instantly boils. You know, these are just basic science things. You're trying to prove your fake station because that's what you're getting off on. You love your rockets and you're a NASA fanboy sort of thing, but in reality, when we look at what really happens to atmospheres and vacuums, is everything tries to fill the void. Everything goes to the path of least resistance, not to the path of most resistance. And when you say that this
I would
spinning
agree.
ball is hovering around the sun at 66,600 miles per hour, then
I would
how
agree.
the hell does this how the hell does this ISS stay in free fall motion around us unless it's on some sort of string? You know, somebody was telling me this the other day that if you ran around the house swinging the ball around, that's the law of conservation of momentum or whatever. But the minute you let that bloody string go, the ball is going to go flying off. And that's exactly what the ISS would do. It's exactly what the moon should be doing. There's no reason for all these things to work.
Then let's answer both of these questions. Okay, your first question is, won't the atmosphere follow the path of least resistance? Yes, that's why it sticks to the ball. A vacuum is just a void. It's not a force. Vacuums don't suck. Vacuums don't pull. Vacuum is not a force.
Yeah, they're non-existent.
Hang on. Vacuum is not a force. Vacuum is not a pull. Vacuum doesn't suck, okay? That's not what a vacuum does. Vacuum just means empty.
Rubbish.
So basically what that means is that they are going to follow the path of least resistance. They're not going to resist the only force that is acting upon it, which is the force of gravity. Your next question was, how does the ISS stay up there? If you have a ball and you throw it sideways, it's going to curve and it's going to hit the ground. If you take that ball again and throw it harder, it's going to curve and hit the ground, but slightly further away. What if I threw that ball so hard and so fast that the curve of its arc matched the curve of the Earth? The ball would always be curving towards Earth, but Earth would always be curving away just as fast. And what you have is a position that ball is in of equilibrium between its free fall speed and its horizontal speed. An orbit has been achieved. Now, what if I was able to go high enough where the drag of the atmosphere is essentially insignificant, where it can maintain that speed for a longer period of time? You would have low Earth orbit. What if I go higher? Geostationary orbit. What if I go higher? Lunar orbit. That's what orbits are. You're going sideways so that the curve of your arc matches the curve of the Earth.
It makes absolutely no sense. Now, vacuum is a force, you know that, so there's no point lying about it. You need a strong
vacuum is
pump
the force
in order to make it. And it's a tiny little vacuum chamber within our atmosphere. And the moment you release a single valve, that atmosphere instantly rushes to fill the void. So if the whole universe was a void, that is exactly where our entire atmosphere would instantly go. And this whole idea of being able to throw, if you threw something really fast off the back of a train, do you really think it's just going to keep spinning around the train? But you're saying that this Earth traveling 67,000 miles per hour, if you throw something off that fast enough, it'll just keep falling around and around at a constant distance. It's just absolutely ridiculous and goes against every single law of nature that we know. Every single law of physics says that, no, the speeding thing taking off leaves it behind in the dust. And that is exactly what would happen to our moon, our ISS, all your freaking satellites. Not a single one of them could actually exist if the Earth was spinning through space. The only reason we do have any sort of satellites whatsoever is because the Earth is stationary, doesn't move anywhere, and we can send them up on some sort of helium balloon, helium blimp, drone, whatever it may be, whatever it is that exists up there. We do have these flying vehicles, but none of them could possibly keep up with the spinning ball going 66,600 miles an hour through space. Absolutely impossible.
So your tangent aside, I now see we have three major issues here. First issues, you actually think a vacuum is a force, which, by the way, it isn't. It never was. It never will be. So I would highly recommend you educate yourself on that one first, because the way a vacuum works is that it's not the vacuum pulling stuff in. It's the atmospheric pressure around it forcing stuff in. However, if the atmosphere itself is the object and not just something that's on your carpet, then the atmosphere itself will only conform to the only force that is acting upon it, which is the force of gravity. Next, even though I explained it to you in such a way that if you have a ball, you throw it sideways, if the curve of its arc matches the curve of the Earth, why would that not work? So basically, you're disagreeing with the entire concept of Newton's canon, which has already been verified to work, as I have shown many people multiple times already. And thirdly,
because if you throw a ball away and the Earth is curving, then the Earth is also spinning and speeding away. Things don't just keep falling around just for the hell of it, because that means then also it has to accelerate at free fall speed to get back around to the front again.
No,
we had this
doesn't.
conversation last time. You couldn't explain how the moon. You told me the moon is on some sort of platform in order to stay at a constant distance from us, even when we're speeding towards it, even when we're speeding away from it. The Earth both repels and attracts the moon or anything else in orbit. You believe that this happens at free fall speed once you set it into motion.
So when you jump from a moving object, do you continue to move at the same speed as that object?
No, you don't.
What the?
No.
Wow.
Slow right down immediately.
So basically, if I jump from a moving
if you
car
jump out of an airplane, are you still going the speed of the airplane as you're falling down to parachute? No, you're not. As soon as you're out of the airplane keeps going and you start falling. Don't be stupid.
That's because of air resistance, dude. Let me try this again. Let's imagine for a second. Let's imagine that we don't have air resistance. If I jump from a moving object, will I continue to move at the same speed as that object?
No, you won't. You will start slowing down immediately.
So now we're disagreeing with Newton's first law of motion. So we disagree with Newton's first law of motion. You don't understand that vacuum is not a force, and you don't understand how orbits work. I mean, you disagree with trigonometry, even though you agree with the methodology. Like, dude, no wonder you think the Earth is flat.
Trigonometry works fine on a flat piece of paper where you can actually measure each and every actual line, but it doesn't work in reality where the line that you're looking at isn't able to be measured because of distance diminution.
Let's try this again. And obviously, you're not going to understand it, but someone is asking in the live chat. So where was I going with this? If you launch your rocket from a moving object such as the Earth, you will continue to have a 1-to-1 speed ratio with the Earth. You don't arbitrarily start slowing down for no fucking reason. It doesn't.
You've left the Earth. Once you've left the Earth, there's no reason
now you're
to keep
disagreeing
with
the concept of inertia. So, do you disagree with inertia then? Do you think inertia is not a thing, or is that part of the conspiracy?
Yeah. Actually,
no, because everything you're saying disagrees with inertia.
No, everything slows down. As I said, if you dropped out of an airplane, you've got that airplane's inertia, but now you're saying instantly air resistance slows you down. No, the minute you jump out of that moving plane, you start dropping straight away.
What slows it down?
Inertia.
What slows it down? If I launch something into the vacuum of space, what slows it down?
Look, now you're making up idiotic bloody concepts. You can't.
No, it's a question. I'm not making shit up. I'm asking you a question. If I launch something into the vacuum of space, what slows it down?
You can't launch anything into a vacuum.
Despite the fact that we can. If we launch something into a vacuum, what slows it down?
It's mass.
So mass slows. What does the mass? What does its mass do that slows it down? So is mass now a force?
If it's depending on the medium that it's sitting in, yeah. So if you're talking about a vacuum, then of course the vacuum has no buoyancy factor whatsoever. Air has some slight buoyancy factor, so things fall through the same rate of air, regardless of their weight. In water, it varies again depending on their buoyancy factor. You know how much air is within them, but things just.
I'm sorry, we're talking about in a vacuum.
Anything
I'm talking about a vacuum. So if I if I throw something with a rocket into the vacuum of space, does it arbitrarily start slowing down in the vacuum of space?
Of course it would, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because there is only one physical plane of existence. This is what a lot of you globers don't get into your heads. There's one physical plane of existence, and everything finds its place according to density and buoyancy. If this hypothetical vacuum that you talk about actually existed, then
Which it
if you
does.
shot a rocket up through the air, which of course it does, eventually it's got nothing to thrust off, and that's why it comes back down again. It will
Besides
not continue
the
to
thing
travel
that's
through your
throwing out the path.
hypothetical vacuum that you've seen in your science fiction movies and you can hypothesize about. It doesn't
Okay,
happen
so
that
now
way.
we don't.
If
So
it
now you
was a
just admitted to
vacuum
not
chamber
understanding
for a rocket,
how rockets work. You don't really
no,
know
I know
how
exactly
rockets
how
work then.
rockets work. They work through the
Well-
medium of air because that's what they're
No,
designed to
they
propel
don't.
through.
No, they
The surface
don't.
gets
No,
so
they
high
don't.
that
The
air has
no, the atmosphere is
density.
absolutely
It's
irrelevant
rarefied.
to a rocket's performance. No, the atmosphere is absolutely irrelevant to how a rocket works. A rocket works
only way
by
they
chucking. No, a rocket works by chucking shit out the ass end of the rocket at Mach 5 because every action has an equal and opposite reaction. The rocket goes up. That doesn't arbitrarily stop because of the environment that it's in. The laws of physics don't magically stop because you're in a vacuum.
If
Dude,
it's got nothing to react
if
against, like a vacuum, nothingness, it's got nothing to push
you
off. So it
sit in a
starts
wheelchair,
spinning around
if you
and all
sit
the
in a
gases
wheelchair,
and it falls back down.
Hold on. Let Fanboy finish Jesus, and then we'll go to you, Fanboy.
okay, good. If
You,
you're
Reds.
sitting in a wheelchair and you have a very heavy medicine ball, if I throw that medicine ball away from me, I'm going to move backwards a little bit. Did I push against the medicine ball, or did I push against the air to make myself move?
Well, you pushed against the ball, and because of the force of its mass, it had sufficient to propel you backwards. But of course, it's still in the medium of air on the ground.
but
You know,
now imagine
not in
this.
a vacuum.
Let's say I was in a vacuum chamber in a spacesuit where I could breathe and not die. I'm sitting in that same wheelchair again. I'm still holding on to that medicine ball. If I toss that medicine ball away from me as hard as I can, and I move, am I going to move backwards still? Yes or no?
I'd say you'd probably move even more because the vacuum
You'd probably
has
move
no
even more.
resistance. Yeah.
Okay, now let's change the
Big
medicine
ball,
ball.
not propelling gases out your ass end.
Yes.
As you're saying, the rocket.
Now let me replace the ball in this example. So I put the ball down. I could throw that ball away from me at maybe, I'm just going to pull a number out of my ass, of 20 miles an hour. I push that 10-pound medicine ball away from me at 20 miles an hour, push me back something. Now let's replace that with, I don't know, a nozzle of some kind. Maybe a nozzle that's in a bell shape. And instead of tossing stuff out at 20 miles an hour, I toss it out at Mach 5 in that vacuum. Am I going to move backwards? Yes or no?
In a vacuum? And
Yes,
what are you tossing
in that
again?
vacuum chamber.
You know, I'm going a bit bored with this conversation. You know, that you're in a vacuum chamber and you're tossing what again?
If I'm in a vacuum chamber and I spew gas, which has mass, out at Mach 5, am I going to move in the opposite direction?
Well, the first thing you're going to be doing is destroying the fact that it's in a vacuum, because all gases seek to equalize that pressure, so it's no longer a vacuum as such, because you've added extra gases to it because of the result of the chemical reaction within it. And plus, then you're also talking about being on a physical surface with the wheels of your wheelchair. So, you know, it doesn't conform to any aspect of reality that we can actually test.
You really don't. Do you know the definition of a solid
in a
experiment?
vacuum without being on a solid surface. And that's all you're talking about. You're talking about wheels having friction on the ground and trying to get propulsion by ejecting something. So in your theoretical thing, yeah, if you're on a solid ground, yeah, you might get some propulsion. If you're really in a vacuum of space,
basically the
you're just going to
propulsion.
expel all your gases in, so they're just going to rush out and you're going to go nowhere. They're just going to go taking off. That's what's going to happen.
So
if you were
the
in
mess
a theoretical
the
vacuum of
medicine
space without
ball
no gravity.
so the medicine ball has mass, and I toss it away from me, I move backwards. The gases in my
Yeah, in your
rocket
hypothetical where you're sitting on the ground.
have mass. The gases in my rocket also have mass, which are also tossed out, only at a much, much higher velocity. And for some magical reason, I don't move back.
No, as I'm saying, you will if you're still sitting on the ground.
Okay,
Not
now
in some
let's go ahead and turn
hypothetical
that. Let's go ahead and
gravity-free
turn that
vacuum
back.
of space.
Now let's go ahead and turn that vector. Now let's say I point straight up in that vacuum chamber. Am I not going to gain altitude?
Probably not. No, I would think that all the gases are going to get expelled straight out the arse end of it, while your rocket basically sits there and falls over.
So basically, I will get force in one vector, but I won't get force in another vector, even though both vectors
You
are
may
in
gain
the
a
same
slight
exact environment.
You may gain the slightest little bit of lift, but you're talking about push across on the ground, where you've got something to push against because the wheels are pushing on the ground due to the fact they're more dense than the empty air. But when you're talking about pushing up through nothingness, there's nothing to push against. So no, you'd go virtually nowhere.
It's the force. You're not pushing against anything. You're expelling matter out the ass and the rocket at an extremely high velocity. That is how rockets
and that's
work.
all that would happen.
And
it would
guess
just keep
guess
coming
what?
out the arse end at extremely high velocity while the rocket just sat there doing nothing.
No, actually not, because by your own admission, you said that medicine ball, which has mass tossed away from me, will apply a force to me, pushing me back. If we simply change the vector,
pushing into the back of your wheelchair, as you push
pushing
away,
into the back of pushing into the back of my wheelchair.
Yeah.
If I'm facing
And
the
then
ground
has
and I
friction on
push
the
it away
ground.
from me, if I face the ground, I push away from me. I'm applying a chair, or I'm applying a force to my wheelchair up into the air. So what is the difference in vector when both are in the same environment? What's the difference? Why does this work in one vector and not the other?
Between the wheels and the ground. The friction is between the wheels and the ground, not in the nothingness. The ground is a real thing. It's a tangible thing.
The medicine
and the wheels
ball
have
is
friction on it. So when you push against that, you're putting some friction onto your wheels, which will make them roll backwards slightly. But when you're talking about pushing through nothing to propel against, you might push against the floor slightly, but you're going to go virtually nowhere because you got no medium through which to propagate. Unlike the ground, with the wheel,
I'm shocked and astonished that you cannot understand this extremely simple concept. You agree with some things, and then you disagree where you know it's going to prove you wrong.
I
find that to be very intellectually dishonest.
Is based on reality. A lot of science is, of course, based on reality, but a lot of it is pseudoscience, theoretical nonsense. And when you talk about traveling in outer space of a vacuum, that is theoretical nonsense. It's all science fiction.
It's not. It's actually confirmed.
Something we can actually do. We can observe.
We can observe it, which is why I did. No, it's something that I actually observed.
You think you did?
No, I did
think you saw something going past the moon.
There's a video on my channel of me doing exactly this, not in one part, but in two parts too.
But I'm glad that you said that, though, Fighter Jesus. You said a buzzword, and I remembered where we left off last time, and I think that this would be a good area to kind of wrap up on, because you teased us with it last time, but we didn't get to go into it too deeply. But you said the key word right there. Can you tell us what your theory on the moon is?
Oh, my theory on the moon? Well, I just believe it's an artificial construct. It's an artificial construct. It's been put up there for whatever reason. And, I mean, you're probably best off looking at my channel where I recently made another rant about it, because I got into it a little bit. I actually called it Thatcher's Law of Perspective plus Discussions, something like that. And I go into it in great detail. My best theory is, of course, that it's artificially constructed. So who put it there? And I believe there's been so much lost in our history that it would take me an hour to describe just the origins of how it came to be. But I do believe that there were giant beings who have been bioengineered over time, possibly in the depths of the bowels of the earth, who are able to mine natural minerals in order to make it. And they would have obviously been quite giant beings. There's much evidence of giant beings. I've actually read a book over 3 parts too called Secret of the Ages, which has a lot of evidence of giant beings. You may laugh, Mr. Godless Engineer, but hey, I've done far more research on this stuff than you ever have.
Well,
And so
if you've done
I can come up with
research,
a best theory. If I can come up with a best theory, the craters do look like something that you'd expect, say, a bubble bursting in boiling mud to appear. So as they
if you
raise it
did
up
research
into
on
the
this,
colder stratosphere, that's
if you
what
did
would
research
cause
on
the
this,
things we call
I
craters.
have. If you did research on this, I have a single question. How do you move something that weighs 7.2 times 10 to 22 kilograms? I'm curious.
Well, you don't know how much it weighs. That's just nonsense to believe it. I think it's
No,
hollow,
I have no.
honey
It's
at
easily
least.
you can
And if
easily
it's full of
calculate it.
hydrogen, then that is what elevates itself. And so as it was filled full of hydrogen, probably through hydrogen generators, which we can all make our own hydrogen generators these days, should we wish, it is lighter than air. So that's what lifted it up. And so if there's a constant hydrogen generators inside of it, lifting it up, once it got up there and it cooled down rapidly, of course, they still have to seal all this hydrogen in. So, of course, if that's their only available material is, say, something like molten glass, molten quartz, molten obsidian, something akin to that, as they're putting on various layers of it, certain parts are going to bust in the big bubbles, and that's what makes the appearance of craters. And eventually it's all sealed in. They've set it in motion because it's on some sort of electromagnetic force revolving around above us, which is what is pushing the tides ahead of us. That's how the tides work. The tides are always in front of the moon, never pulled by it. That's basically how I think the moon is probably most likely to be in existence. And I think that they actually made several other failed attempts, some of which are just cling closer to the sun.
Okay, hold on.
Let me.
Can I try to sum this up real quick? So
sure.
Basically, tell me if I get this right or wrong, Flat Earth Jesus. Giants that were forged in the center of the earth, for which apparently there's a lot of evidence for, filled up a glass type of material with hydrogen that then floated above the earth and then quickly cooled and formed the moon?
In a nutshell, you might say that's a simplistic version of it. Yeah, but I don't know exactly how they did it. That's what I'm saying. I don't know all the answers to everything. But to me, this is like the most logical explanation.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What do you think the sun? What do you think the sun is then? If that's how we got the moon, what do you think the sun is?
Well, the sun is basically an interdimensional portal. If you were able to see it from above, assuming you could get above it, it would appear to be a black hole surrounded by nothing but white light. On the time when the moon is full, you would see nothing but a white orb surrounded by nothing but black nightness of the black night sky. And that is where the origins of the yin and yang symbol came from. So the sun itself doesn't really exist. It's a nothingness. It's a portal that allows the light to emanate. Well, it doesn't even emanate from it. It's some sort of electromagnetic charge that when it reaches the atmosphere, the noble gases of our atmosphere causes them to glow. And then as we view the sun through the atmosphere, these noble gases, that is why it appears to be this big shiny ball of light. But as soon as it goes beyond our horizon, of course, those noble gases cease illuminating. They get less and less until eventually it's our nighttime again. So the sun is basically an interdimensional portal that transforms light from another dimension.
If I could ask real quick, you say that the noble gases stop doing something as the sun goes below the horizon. I mean, you understand that while it goes below the horizon for us, it is like sunrise somewhere else, or the sun is illuminating another part of the earth. So I guess I don't understand how it could be dimming out these gases or whatnot, but also illuminating them at the same time.
It's vicinity location, isn't it? The nearer it is to the sun, the more those gases glow. And because the Earth is still really big and the sun is going around above us, it only illuminates it locally. And that's why it appears dimmer as it gets towards sunset or sunrise. And when it's directly overhead, it glows so brightly that's why the gases glow so brightly. And the moon itself, when it is lit by the sun, is only the sunlit part of it during the daytime is visible through those gases because it is bright enough to be seen. But of course, some people say, well, how come we can see blue sky through the moon? A lot of flat earthers actually, I'll turn around and describe to them, no, you're seeing the illuminated gases in front of it. You're just seeing the moon, the sunlit part of the moon shining through it.
Hey, Kyle.
So,
yes.
Distance means that the sun stops illuminating the atmosphere.
Do you know how I know that model is completely wrong? Because if the sun were rotating over us like many flat earthers say it does, then the angular size of the sun would change throughout the day. And when you actually do this observation, it doesn't.
That's right. It doesn't, because as I said, it illuminates the gases of the atmosphere, and that's what gives us the apparent size and location of the sun. The actual sun itself might be way, way further away and way different. So that's why you can't triangulate its size and distance from two different places, because it's not the actual sun. You're just seeing the apparition of it through the atmosphere, and the atmosphere itself being a constant size, no matter how far away, and it appears to get low to the horizon because of perspective, means that the size will never change. The angular size cannot ever change. It's still moving in a parallel line over the exact same.
The angular size of the sun will have to change, because if you look at the sun through a solar filter, you see that
object.
Well, obviously it is because of the appearance of sunspots. Things are on the sun. You can clearly see a definitive surface to the sun with something as simple as sunspots in a solar filter. So it's clear to me and anyone else that looks at this thing through a solar filter that you are looking at the sun as it actually is. It is literally that big in the sky, because that's how big it actually is in the sky. So if we were seeing the sun going,
some other objects.
If we were to see this,
some other object in front of it.
If we were to see the sun going over the flat Earth, in a circle, like let's say over the equator at equinox, we would see the sun rise at one angular size, grow to 3 to 4 times bigger midday, and then shrink again to the size it was when it initially rose. Guess what we don't see happening? This is a direct contradiction for the flat Earth.
No, it's a clear misunderstanding of perspective, which I've explained multiple times, as I said. Yeah, people who want to know can go to my channel and see. This symbol here, the Freemasonic symbol, tells you exactly how it all works. The saying of the Freemasonic symbol says, on the level, always on the level. This here is what's known as the set square. This here is the path of the all-seeing eye, the sun, and this is the angle that we see it from our perspective. So we see it going up, we see it going down again, but it's always on the level.
Your definition of the law
is all about looking at parallel lines, traveling how we perceive them to be, going up and down again. You think it's going down, it's not. It's just going distant, and then it eventually gets obscured by the set square. That's why it's called set.
I already told you. I already told you this during our last conversation. You can't BS me when it comes to perspective, because I know it. The law of perspective is alpha equals 2 times the arctan of G over 2R. Alpha is the angular size of an object. G is the actual size of the object. R is the distance to the object. This mathematical equation does not state anywhere that an object traveling away from you is going to arbitrarily start disappearing bottom up. In fact, what it does say is that on a flat Earth, we should see the sun shrink in totality. Your BS conspiracy does not match the actual law perspective.
No. The set square obscures it. That's why it appears to be obscured bottom first, because you're not taking into account that the set square, you're at the bottom of it. Everything beneath you appears to rise up to the center of your eyes. That's how perspective really works. You think you can see
Unfortunately not. Parallel lines don't intersect by definition. If perspective acted the way that you think it acted, then we would see train tracks crossing over in the distance. We don't see that happening, dude.
No.
You have a misunderstanding of perspective, which is based on a conspiracy.
On the flattened level. Train tracks are on the flattened level. The sun is up really, really high.
It doesn't matter if the train tracks are on the ground or pointing straight up.
It's just been obscured.
Let's hypothetically say we had 2 poles that are parallel with each other, going straight up. How far would I have to look up before they start crossing over in the distance?
You're talking about poles on the ground once again.
I'm talking about parallel lines.
Always going to be on the ground.
So basically, according to you, parallel lines cross over because reasons.
Well, yeah, you can see it. You can see it quite often with, say, a line of telegraph poles going into the horizon. You can see where the obscurity point starts to obscure them bottom first, and you can still see
But they
tiny amounts
never
of the top
cross
of it. It's what a
over.
lot of people confuse with curvature.
They
Well,
never
that's the
cross
crossover
over.
point, isn't it? It's an obscurity point. Then, because these things are low to the ground, that's why it appears that way. The sun is up very
The
high,
reason
and
why
that's
they
why it gets
become
obscured by your nearby horizon, just a few miles away at most. Gets obscured once it's sufficiently far enough away, because
no,
it
the
is
reason
moving away.
the
We're
reason
rolling
why
away from it.
objects get obscured as they get further away from you is because their angular size becomes so small that the available resolution of your eye is insufficient to make out the
On the
object.
surface.
So no,
Yeah, we're talking about on the
If I
surface. We're
had
not about things up in the
if I
sky.
have an object going away from me over a flat Earth and lines are parallel and parallel lines don't cross over by definition, that means that I shouldn't be able to see that sun set at all. I should see it disappear as a finer and finer and finer
Yeah.
point in the sky. But guess what? We
Where's
don't
my
see.
oven mitt?
We still see the angular size of the sun is what it always is throughout the day, and yet it's still setting. The only way that that can happen is if something is blocking our sight with the sun. That thing is the curvature of the Earth.
The horizon. As I told you, depth perception for dummies. God, I need to show you a bloody picture of how depth perception works. Everything. Look at your floor right now. Look at your floor into the corner of your room and look how it appears to rise up. Look at the ceiling. Look how it appears to sink down. These 2 points both those lines are parallel to each other, but due to your eyes, to your perception, the ceiling line is going down, the floor line is going up. When you go out into nature and see something like sun happening, the thing beneath your feet is going to appear to rise up to a certain point where it creates this obstruction point, whereas the things really high up are going to appear to go a much steeper line down until they're so far away they disappear bottom first as a simple matter of normal everyday perspective.
The floor will never cross over the ceiling. The floor will never cross over the ceiling. So yes, find a room and please
that's because
draw
of the
me a
viewing
picture
height.
because dude, even if you were to slam your face against the ground, that ceiling will never cross the ground and the ground will never cross the ceiling. Your understanding of perspective is fundamentally flawed. At the most basic level, you don't understand perspective.
The last time I went to, say, when I went to the Philippines, we went via Hong Kong. Hong Kong airport has these massive, massive long hallways. This is going back 7 years or something now. And I was just, before I'd even really got into flat Earth, to be honest, I was just amazed by it. I was able to focus looking down the hallway, just how much the bottom of people appeared to be cut off by the floor. You could see them from the waist up as they're walking away. They're that far away. That is because the floor creates an obscurity point. I'm able to focus a very long distance. This is kilometers down this tunnel, these hallways, and people are obscured bottom first, just as the sun gets done on the Earth when you're looking at it in reality. It's it's not because of your spinning ball going away. It's normal perspective that makes everything beneath you appear to rise up to a certain level.
According to you, you're basically saying that eventually the ceiling is going to intersect the floor because perspective, even though that's not at all how perspective works. Now let's imagine
eventually the ceiling will be obscured by the floor.
Oh, the ceiling will be obscured by the floor. Okay, now let's go ahead and switch it up. What if I hung myself upside down, ankling my feet to the ceiling? Is the ceiling now going to be the one obscuring the floor?
Yeah, of course, because it's all due to your perspective. Wherever your eye level is, that's where your cutoff point's going to be. So yeah, it would.
So guys, if you want to make the sun reappear again, just stand on your head. You heard it here first, folks. Can we make that into a t-shirt?
Yeah, stand on your head at the height of the sun.
We've got to
come on.
We've got to get to we've got to get to super chat because we have a lot of those. But I didn't know if you heard this a second ago, but I know we have a clip to prove that this is confirmed. Dave? Confirmed. Illuminati.
Okay. Of course, that's the answer.
Okay, let's get to some of these super chats, see if we have any questions.
A lot of people are afraid of the Illuminati.
Yep. We are Illuminati. You know that, though, right?
For good reason, you should be afraid of the Illuminati.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Okay.
not afraid.
What's
I
the
reckon
super
they're
chat?
actually quite
What's the
adept.
super chat?
They know what they're
I tried,
doing. They're brainwashing the sheep.
I tried
They're quite intelligent.
I tried
in
everyone
what
for
they do.
you. They are all scared. Brainy Beaver, your intro is amazing. Hashtag jealous. Thank you, Brainy Beaver. Ardawan says, I have my bribe. Cool. Rez Instant says, why do fluffers hate reality? Only they can answer that. And truth be told, no one cares what the answer is.
No, we understand
Fletcher,
reality. That's all we do.
Well, here's the thing. There's a lot of these. So we're gonna have. I'm gonna have you respond to like these like the serious question ones. You know, obviously there's gonna be some just comments and stuff mixed in there, but just because we have so many and we're pushed on time, just hold back a little bit on the comments. Fletcher Iser says, even us black people know OJ did it. We are not delusional anymore. We don't sick Russian vids on her for the first time. That is just mean. You're probably right. Big Rub says, for once, not listening to FNF in car. Safe night. Rapid X, time is ticking, Mr. Oakley. Mike the Globetard. Nathan Oakley will be hashtag bitch made. Robert Williams, 1/3 equals 33. 2/3 equals 666. 1/3 plus 2/3 equals 1. 1 equals evil plus evil. That's very good. Big Boy says, Flat Earther talking about some sensible questions. Rez Instant says, flat earthers don't deserve courtesy when they are busy accusing everyone else of being liars, conspiratists, idiots, and sheep. Fight the flat earth. Grandfather, I don't know who Grandfather Dumbass is the most intellectually dishonest person on the globe. He thinks that, this must be you. The giant, giants dug the moon out of the Grand Canyon. Rez Instant says, flat earth, I don't understand this, so it doesn't exist. Normal person, here's the way it works. Because XYZ, flat earther, you're not listening. I don't understand that, so it's not true. Randy Beaver, what does grandfather think the gradient goes to? Or what does grandfather think the gradient goes to? Helios 575, we've observed gravity waves at LIGO proving gravity. Not an idiot. This is like the time I tried to explain math to my dog. Helios 575. Flat Earth Aussie Jesus, please explain why I can't put a lead ball in a sand pile and the ball will stay on top of the sand even though the ball is more dense than the sand.
Okay, well, the sand is sufficiently dense to give it buoyancy, so of course it won't unless you shook it. And if you did shake it, then the ball will sink through it.
Okay. So you basically so basically it's the atmosphere that provides the directional influence of the object. That's what makes it fall.
Well, the atmosphere gives no buoyancy factor whatsoever, apart from maybe to a feather or something. So, of course, it takes the path of least resistance. Sand has a lot of resistance. So, of course, that's where it stops. If you had the sand in the box and you shook it, the ball will still sink because sand doesn't offer as much resistance.
Again, I asked the question. So, is the atmosphere providing any directional influence to objects? Yes or no?
Yes, technically, yes.
Okay, so the atmosphere makes objects fall. Am I understanding you correctly?
Well, no, picking them up makes them fall and releasing them. If there's nothing to support it, once you release it, it will just fall through the atmosphere. So it doesn't
understand that.
fall.
I understand. If I let go of something, and it starts to accelerate downward, that's all due to the atmosphere around it, correct?
It's due to being in the medium of air, yes.
Okay, so the atmosphere provides that directional influence. Why do objects still fall in a vacuum then?
Because it has even less resistance than the atmosphere. Duh.
But there's no atmosphere providing the directional influence.
These are like 5-year-old questions. Huh?
And you don't, and the fact that you don't see the contradiction in what you just said is something that even a 5-year-old would actually understand.
There's no contradiction.
Okay.
There's a contradiction.
Less resistance in a vacuum, some resistance in air, more resistance in water, more resistance in sand.
So you heard it here first. Atmosphere provides a directional influence and is the resistance to that influence. I love contradictions.
Okay, 0132122. Someday fluffers will learn that I don't understand isn't a counter argument. Today is not that day. Res instance, flat earthers are right about one thing. Perspective is the key. Their own warped perspective based on their personal the personal understandings
Observation.
in understanding reality. The banner of Hamura Akima, math him Reds, math him harder. Yes. NZ Pure says the triangle is a lie, rolling on the floor laughing.
Hang on.
Cajun Crustacean. So now we see the full measure of flirt dishonesty. Ed Warden says missing the correct emoji, but still ding, 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 ding. Tree Tramp. I like that. Basic altimeters are literally air pressure gauges. Res instance, maybe we should
Can we
should
just talk
drop
about
flat
that
earth
for a
off the
quick second?
Sure.
You just said the altimeters are air pressure measurements. So, of course, as you go up higher, you got less and less air pressure. So it's giving you the false illusion of being higher than you really are because there's less and less pressure. So you might think when you measure it at ground level, you're at 1 foot, take it up 100 feet. All of a sudden, there's that much less pressure. They might tell you that you're at 120 feet. Take it up to 40,000 feet, you might actually seriously only be at 20,000 feet without even knowing any different because the air pressure is less. That's what that particular physical measuring device does. So that's what I'm trying to get at before.
So that's completely wrong what Flat Earth Jesus said. There are altimeters that are pressure sensitive, but there are some that are radar based, which shoot radar signals down
through
to
the same medium.
Earth and it measures it going back up. But also the air pressure, like the decrease in air pressure is proportional to the height. So no matter what Flat Earth Jesus says right here, he's wrong. It's proportional to the height above the Earth. So,
even though air pressure decreases and therefore radio waves like sonar waves would also move in bigger passages because there's less medium to propagate through.
Radio waves travel at the speed of light. They don't travel at any different speed depending on a medium.
So does my love for this show. Travels at the speed of light. And for all you watching, thank you for there's
that must be how they send us
over
images back from Mars.
there's over 1,000 people watching. So I love you all at the speed of light. Thank you for sticking through with us. Rez Instant says maybe we should drop Flat Earth Jesus out of an airplane at 40,000 feet with a stopwatch, and he can time how long
And
it
see
will
if I
take to
keep
hit the
moving
ground.
at the same speed of the plane.
Yeah, confirming both the altitude and the gravity at the same time.
Inertia.
Hoosier Atheist says the argument from Science One weakness. Wesley Smith said it's clear that Father Jesus doesn't understand math, therefore he does not trust it. Harry Dunn says Bogan Jesus. Not sure what that means. Bogan.
Aussie Bogan.
Is that a thing?
Aussie Bogan. It just means a degenerate Aussie redneck sort of thing.
Okay. I feel you there. I too have been called an uncultured redneck many times on this show. Many times.
Hey, what's wrong with being an uncultured redneck?
Not a damn thing. Not a damn thing. Rez Innocent says it makes absolutely no sense to him only. Scrap the skeptic squirrel. There is no void. The supposed void is filled with plasma and has been proven so in recent years. James Magoo says, ask Aussie if he gets up to go pee on a plane. Does he get pinned to the back wall? No, then why would astronauts get pinned to the wall of the ISS?
Okay, well, the plane is moving at about 500 miles per hour. And when I do get up, I do feel a little bit awkward as I first start walking. It feels a little bit weird. When I'm standing there peeing, I've got to put a hand against the wall because it's quite unsteady. But that's 500 miles per hour, not 17,500 miles per hour. So come on. That's a huge difference.
Okay. Not an idiot says, I apologize to my dog. He's much smarter than Flurfs. Ash Scott, diminution, you arrogant, dumb, naked, bogan halfwit. Wow. You done made somebody angry. Blake Carter, this level of stupidity is not natural. You'd have to put in serious work to get this done, so at least we can tell he's not lazy. Blue Jay, $5 because I'm a physics major and this guy is offending me. Oh, man. Chrissy, you can fly faster. You can fly
indoctrination
faster.
is strong in that one.
You can fly faster the higher you go up because there's less molecules in the air. SR-71 Blackbird. Now tell me again why rockets don't work
to give it buoyancy.
Mm-hmm.
If you're that high up, there's no molecules. The wings need air to give them the lift. That's why planes can't go higher than about 80,000 feet because the air is too rarefied, and that's their maximum height. It's basically what's called a glass ceiling. You can't go higher than
Mhm.
what the air gives you buoyancy for. We sort of went through that. So yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Keep going to the next one.
Yep. Demonic Davros says my IQ just got damaged listening to this. Wesley Smith, he looks like a wizard genius in his beard and glasses, but yet he can't. I can tell he knows less than I do. Leave it to the big boys like I do. Flat Earth Jesus. At least they say you look like a wizard. Res Instance. Here's the real heart. Scat the Skeptic Squirrel says, "Hey, friction ties you to stop moving. Tries to stop you from moving, not because you move." Alston Blanton. This guy doesn't understand basic trig. It's a waste of time, but thanks Jesus for showing up, even though this was a disaster.
And basic trig,
Darius,
but you can't apply it
Darius
to 3D reality.
Okay, I've got about 6 more to go. Darius Spearman says, please ask Spo if he's ever been on a swing, suspended in the air, pumped his legs back and forth to move. That's action and reaction. Big Sky Pioneer says we need to start a drinking game for each time Flat Earth Show moderated by Godless Engineer, how many times he will facepalm during the show. Bombay, Flat Earth Jesus, are you in Queensland?
Just south of the border, just west of Byron Bay, the easternmost point of the Australian mainland, where I do a lot of my flat Earth experiments.
Okay. Curtis
no, I'm
Vanguard,
not in Queensland.
you believe in interdimensional portals and not gravity? That's a good question.
Yeah, well, interdimensional portals to me make a lot more sense because we know that dimensions exist. We can see the basic ones, 1, 2, 3, and maybe some of us see 4 being time. And of course, interdimensional portals are entirely possible, but gravity is just a made-up myth to try and support the heliocentric model of being on a spinning ball going around the sun, because they want to put the sun at the place of center of worship. That's whatever the place of worship is center. So heliocentrism is 100% the most ancient superstitious religious belief of sun worship, putting the sun at the center. Okay. When the Earth becomes the stationary planar Earth and the sun serves us, going around us, it becomes actually far more logical rather than superstitious.
There's a couple more that came in, so I got to get through these. Urban Roderick says, where is Flat Earth Jesus tinfoil hat? The Athens 619 says, Flat Earthers are dense. Adamantium can't cut them. We should ask Snoop Dogg since he's always that high. Aaron Bates, Reds, if perspective set sun, then call it distant X. Flat Earth equinox, why North and South Hemisphere people have a different distance for X. True Blue, what force is making the sun and moon go around the Earth? Do you want to answer that really quick, just very briefly?
Electromagnetic repulsion, basically. They're levitating around us, and that's why I say that force is what causes the tides, because they're pushing down on the Earth, which is what keeps them up.
Okay. RT96, someone failed a saving throw versus a triangle with sides of 1, 1, and 1. Fight the Flat Earth. Ask Grandfather what a gyroscope is. What's a gyroscope?
Yeah, come on. Do we really need to waste time on that?
Nancy Visto says, thanks, Reg. You saved me from brain trauma. And then the last one here, for all the Aussies, he's in Queensland. That explains a lot. I don't even know what that,
I'm not in Queensland.
Means, but
I'm in northern New South Wales, a little town called Clunes, a little village, and it's between Lismore and Bangalow, which is just west of Byron Bay, as I said, the easternmost point of the Australian mainland, where I often go and do visual experiments to prove how flat the Earth is.
Well, thank you both for coming in, especially Flat Earth Jesus for doing this last minute. Reds, do you want to talk about your timer real quick? And I know that Steve's having a show after this on his channel. He's linked it up in the live chat, so you can check that out. I believe it's a 1v1 hangout. Is what I saw. So that's in the live chat too, if you want to see that. Reds, do you want to plug the timer again?
Sure. Yeah, I can plug the timer again. So I'll first just say this just so that we can all get caught up to speed. So if you haven't watched the entire show and you skipped ahead to this, here's basically what we learned today, ladies and gentlemen. Trig doesn't work for the space station because reasons. Newton's laws work for me, but not rockets because reasons. Inertia is bullshit. Parallel lines cross over in the distance, even though they're parallel, and the atmosphere causes things to fall and resist them falling at the exact same time. So now that we have all gotten caught up on what this show is actually about, let me explain what this clock is. This is a timer, and it will be counting every second of every day that Nathan Oakley refuses to debate me on a neutral platform. So, Nathan, I am calling you out. Step away from your mute button and step onto a platform you do not control. Debate flat Earth with me. Support your claim that the Earth is flat. And every time you don't, we will have a record of how long you've been doing that for. Thank you.
Welcome. And also, you can check out Red's shirt. We can throw that up there real quick. Red's has a shirt in the non-sex shop you can get. It's called Science Doesn't Give a Shit About Your Feelings. Evidence is the only thing that matters. Hashtag Team Cunt there. That is available now. You can order those. GE, do you have anything?
Well, yeah. I mean, we'd be sorely remiss if we didn't fully flesh out what we learned here tonight. And that's the giant center of the Earth dwarves that apparently farted helium into the moon and then floated it above the Earth, as well as math not working, but also sometimes working, and air behaving irregularly. So, I mean, all hail the mighty Earth dwarves. They do magical work. And yeah, I guess that's it for me tonight. I
think Flat Earth Jesus left. I was going to give you the last word, Flat Earth Jesus, but it seems you're frozen or you're gone.
He's probably gone. It's like, this jackass is making fun of me again in my dwarves.
He got teleported through one of those flat Earth portals or some shit. I don't know. I don't know what the fuck this show is anymore. For all the 1,000 people watching, thank you so much for having such low standards. We wouldn't be here without you guys.
Amen. You know, I say that at least once a week. You guys go well undeserved of thank you. You guys rock. Tomorrow we'll be joined by for the Smoking Nun with Katie Paulson. We'll be joined by Jeff Holiday to tackle the anti-vaxxers movement again. Maybe we've got somebody that is going to try to defend the anti-vax position. We'll see if they show up. If not, we'll just go through some of the things that Jeff Holiday's done. And then immediately following that, you can join me and Mr. Atheist for another day of Sunday Fun Day, where we will be, I think, diving into a pastor that Aaron Ra annihilated here recently. So there you are. Oh, Flat Earth Jesus, I was going to give you the last word.
No, thanks. I seem to have been booted from the channel for a minute there. I missed what happened in the last couple of minutes.
I was talking about what we got coming up. But I'll give you the last word, and then we're closing out.
Yeah, no, I don't know where I was at, so I really wouldn't know where to begin.
You can just plug your channel.
I would appreciate it if your moderators stopped blocking me on your channel. That would be great. I've got Flat Earth Aussie Jesus is my channel. Previously known as Ross Thatcher, but
I
unbanned you.
Well, I don't give you a reason to, just because I disagree with you and you try to ridicule me all the time. And if I dare try to stand up for myself and ridicule you back, you think that's a reason to block me, and I don't think that's fair. Everybody should have the chance to speak freely.
Okay.
We
unbanned you.
I also have the channel I was just looking at called King of Hearts or something, and that's still banned as well because I tried to make a comment saying.
Oh, well, we just unbanned your other thing. John Rapp says, so many dings, I hear a fire alarm, check your dumpster. And then Justine Fallett says, I think we should arm bears. Wow, that's an interesting thought. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thanks to Reds, Father Jesus, and, of course, Dallas Engineer. This was a fun and enlightening thing. I'm going to go outside and see if I can't see the giant moon and see if I can't find out if there's any truth to this, because I am fascinated by this claim. And we'll see you guys tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern for the Smoking Nun.